Hi, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. Welcome if you're currently here in the live chat. I appreciate it. I mean, first of all, what we've got to do, new achievement. World record has been broken for the fastest rat to show up in a new case. Yeah! There you go. And that's to do with the Idaho 4. Oh my God, what are those particles flying past me then? Oh shit, I forgot about those particles as well in the last video. Do you see the white stuff? What's going on? I don't know. Well, you know what? Even the paranormal ghosts are acknowledging the rats, right? Come on. Yep, there we go. So, football is on shortly, also known as soccer. Okay, soccer, where you kick a ball around and dribble it. It's the final, okay? Hopefully Argentina wins, okay? Don't really want France. The way they've been playing, quite dirty. All the tackles, getting lucky with the referees and decisions. Yeah, I don't want them to win. We'll see what happens, okay? So this video might be shorter than usual, but it still ties in line with a valid point to take a look at, okay? Today, what we're looking at is the theory around the grain truck. Was it used during, let's say, disposing of Dylan Rounds? Because there is a chance that when Dylan was hurt, he could have been near to the grain truck, okay? And we can tie on with some other bits and bobs too. So it's kind of like a viewer request. Shout out to Christy, who was roughly speaking about it. I'll try and add on to it and explain it in a valid way with the use of maps, I guess. And also an aerial shot as well of the actual grain shed with the truck out, okay? More context behind that shortly. But first, we need to go back on the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page. I'm aware of that interview I need to take a look at, but it's too late to be doing it now. But Candice Cooley has provided yet another update regarding Dylan Rounds crop farmland. Let's take a look at that first, and then we'll move on straight to the map grain truck discussion, okay? And also in the live chat, as we do go along, make sure to share your thoughts, opinions down below, and you can also talk about a range of stuff. And anything else? There was supposedly that video made about me, but I've not seen it or heard it, so I don't know where's it at or if anyone's seen it. SPs, I don't know. But maybe Indiana can explain it afterwards. So let's head on over to the Find Dylan Rounds Facebook page now and begin analysing. Right, so here we are. We just scroll down a little bit. You can see Candice Cooley yesterday at 3:42. I don't know if that's PM or AM, it doesn't quite say. Click the More section. Okay. So, Candice Cooley says, people have asked many times about Dylan's crop. We did shut the pivot off to preserve any evidence, but the triticale continued to grow. When we were out searching in October, my mom, Denise Cooley, asked me to dig some up for her. I had no clue why, but I did. Amazingly, she has preserved Dylan's crop for us. We will cherish it forever. Okay, that's interesting, that. So, I guess that explains it for people, clears up some questions. So, main bit, the pivot shut off to preserve any evidence. So I assume they're referring to evidence at the pivot. Is that correct in saying it that way? And the crops is away from the evidence, so it could be handled with. So I know people have referred to the pivot in the past, the main line, and some other bits and bobs along the way. What sort of evidence do you think would be at the pivot, though? Is it Dylan walking down there and then getting hurt, getting ambushed? Or is it Dylan being taken down there and being disposed of? Which one? As for the pivot, we have seen it on Google Earth, though when it refers to Dylan Round's crops, that's what I'm a little bit confused about. And I'll do it in the map format in a second, just to put my point across, because it's a little bit confusing. So, get the fuck off. I hate those pop-ups. So it looks like you've got some jewellery there, but with a cork plugged into the glass bead, if you call it that. There seems to be like a cutting from Dylan's crop and preserved inside of it. That was quite good, that, quite clever. You know, in memory of Dylan, of course, and it honours his crop. Yeah, fair enough. Let's check the comments out. Just click all them. My God, how many are there? The reason, if you don't know why I'm checking the comments, is because sometimes it might reveal more. Wait, is that it? I keep clicking, but no more keeps showing up, so I assume that's it. So let's see what people have to say. I'll skip for it if there's nothing that important. This is truly beautiful keepsake. Okay. Well, amazing, precious. Yeah. Not sure if there's any questions, though. This is amazing, remembered by many, touched so many lives. Amazing, brought tears to my eyes. I pray he is found and want do badly for him to be alive. I know this may not be possible now, but keeping his first crop and dream alive forever to hold has got to be amazing. I mean, yeah, because there was confusion in the past and questioning of, is that it? You know, the crop gone to waste. People were commenting on it as well, you remember? People were like looking at photos, I believe, and saying, oh, look how rough it looks, and you know, it's just fading away, but it seems like it was under control in the end. Same comments, isn't it? Oh, here we go. Wendy Cummings says, Candice, is there some that I can read everything that is going? I have missed a lot. I'm so sorry. Go to the featured tab. Oh, yeah. Yeah, most of the comments are just like commenting like in support of it. Please know that I'll be thinking of you this Christmas. From Australia. It's disgusting that law enforcement have been absolutely impotent in their investigation. Do you think that the LE will ever step back in, like make their presence once again, or not? Well, I guess if they found Dylan's remains, then obviously LE does step in, but, you know, anywhere in between, do you think Box Elder County Sheriff's Office will make any more hiccups, mess-ups? Hiccups? What am I saying? Hiccups? Oh no, I'm using all the correct wording wrong. Hiccups? No, hiccups is the correct word, isn't it? Where you might make a mistake, you might act out. Yeah, hiccup. Yeah, I don't know why I questioned that. Oh. I can imagine Americans saying, American? What's that language, man? That means something else. Wow, too bad. Right, okay, so it all seems to be the same thing. So, we just go back to the top, right? So, you got the pivot, and then you've got the crop. How close or how far apart are they? Let's head on over to the maps quickly. So here we are in Lucin. So, not far from the grain shed, which is down here. You can see there. Not far away. Northeast, I would say, over here, is a pivot. And from the looks of it, the comments, the response in my previous videos, this is Dylan Round's pivot. Okay? Now, what about Dylan Round's crops? Where they at? I'd assume his farm down here. His farm being in this area. His trailer, which isn't on here, but the spot where it would be parked. So, this section here, not exactly a square, it's kind of a wonky square. This patching here, where you can see it, and the ground of it. Is this where the crop was of Dylan's? Is it? Yes, no? Does anyone know? Is this where the crop, where the evidence has been preserved? In Candice Cooley's comment on Facebook page. Is that correct? Also, is this directly the area here where Dylan was in his tractor doing the seeding? Yes? No? Just these little questions, right? If people don't have time to respond to them in this video, feel free to respond to those questions down below in the comment section after this video, okay? It'll be appreciated. So, return back to this pivot. It's the only one that's really visible. Unless that because of a pivot, it grows stuff, of course, and there's a crop present, literally on top, on the ground. Maybe there's certain sections which were cornered off. That's the only other thing I can think of. What do you think? Do you think Candice Cooley, when she is referring to the crops, is at Dylan's farm or the crops that have grown at the land of the pivot? Which one? And as well, what's the significance of this area? I mean, although you've got the two trailers down here, which, if they are Dylan's, are no longer there because they were back at Dylan's farm, his actual farm. Maybe these pieces of equipment remained as they were, scattered about. But what's the significance of this area? Was Dylan on this land walking around the pivot? Was Dylan dragged here and then buried in the ground? What do you think? I mean, in an area like this where it seems kind of fresh, right? Disturbed soil. If in the early days, like how people said, if you're monitoring the area, you look for vultures, you look for birds hovering over, that could be a direct clue where Dylan is at or where someone could be buried, right? Possibility. If you feel the need for deeper analysis on this area, maybe we can try that in the future. Just wanted to refer back to it now whilst we're here, okay? And as for the leakage in the area, is there really any significance about that or not? What do you think? It needed repairing. Was it repaired? Yes, no? Maybe it was in the past, but it needed maintaining, right? Always fighting against it because it keeps leaking from time to time. So, we've got that done, okay? Not too far from the grain shed, though it is separated from in between because of these train tracks. Is there a crossing nearby? I don't know. Doesn't look like it. There's one further down near Lucin Pond, but is there any ones closer by? No. Anyway, let's move on to the situation with the grain truck and I'll show you a photo of it, okay? So this is a screenshot from Heavy D's footage when he flew over the area the very first time, okay? Way back at the start in June. Probably Heavy D was one of the first few YouTubers that was active on the case, not in the long term, just the short term, actually being present, documenting it, assisting in searching, and as well communicating with the family. At the time, it was Candice Cooley and her newer husband, right? Now, I'm just trying to think. I don't know where Justin was at the time. He might have been carrying on with work. But, you know, Diesel Brothers, Heavy D, his crew, YouTube channel were present, partially because their workshop is based in Utah, right? So it's kind of accessible to do these cases, just like how they were looking for Susan Powell. So it makes sense there. But yeah, as for this image, significance of it, as you see, on the right-hand side, you see that reddish truck, the truck with the red trailer, you want to call it that. That is supposedly the grain truck, right? What's it doing there? Why is it, like, been pulled out of the grain shed? Well, some of you may already know, but for others that don't, I'll explain it. From how it's been worded by Candice Cooley over time through the different interviews is, we go back to June the 2nd. June the 2nd, when Jim Brenner, wanted to do his spring cleaning as the LE were on site, sitting back, holding back, and not even caring. Not a care in the world, right? In the process, though, Brenner was allowed and also did it himself to get into the grain truck. I assume he, moved the grain truck because he needed to clear the space so he could get around, right? The grain shed not being too big, the truck being a fair size, it's going to be cramped in there, right? You start moving stuff about, you might clunk against the truck, you might not be able to get back out. And as well, Brenner, size of him, it could get a bit sticky. So that's what it was described by Candice Cooley. Jim Brenner, got inside of Dylan Round's grain truck, drove it out, and left it out of the grain shed, as you see on screen right now. And it remained there all the way up to the point where I guess it was taken away by the police for the first time, right? So this is that. That's why this screenshot, when Heavy D was flying over, this was at the time Jim Brenner was still walking free. This was the time when Jim Brenner was still in his trailer across over that way, as described by Candice Cooley, over that hill. You remember? That's kind of interesting, that, how, although there's no interviews with Brenner, there's no footage by YouTubers of going to Brenner's trailer or knocking on his door, though Heavy D was probably one of the only ones close-ish to Brenner physically in the presence of him. That's kind of weird, that, isn't it? Now, I wonder why Heavy D didn't go over to the trailer to ask Brenner questions. Is it because Candice Cooley advised him not to? I don't know. Would have been interesting, right, to get a different side of the story early on. But yeah, just thought I'd mention that as for relevancy of this photo, the relevancy of why the truck's out, because Brenner moved it and did not park it back in the grain shed. It remained like that till the police collected it. What happened after that, though? Well, so they took it in, analysed it, looked for, I guess, evidence, DNA. Whether it happened at the time or later, because they did take it back in at a later point to be reanalysed, okay? So I don't know at which point, the first time or the second time, but DNA was found of inside of the truck, and I guess on the outside. Candice Cooley was saying how there's all kinds of DNA and prints from different people, including Don Hatley, Jim Brenner, Dylan Rounds, etc. So numerous people have used the grain truck, but what the problem was, they can't date it back Does that make sense? Because so many people have had their hands on the truck, whether it be borrowing it, whether it be for work, Dylan telling them to move it or to, do a job or a task. You don't know which is which in what order. And was it a week ago? Was it the day Dylan went missing? Or was it months ago? That's what they couldn't determine, I guess. Now, I don't know if there's been any more breakthroughs since, but I just wanted to, point that out, right? Kind of interesting in a way. What would I say? I mean, there's no cameras, which doesn't help, so you can't check the relevancy of that. I guess all you could do, but it's just a matter of who's telling the truth and who isn't, is who was the last person to use the grain truck? I guess that's the main question, right? Whoever's the last one to use it, then you could say, well, those fingerprints could date to the day Dylan went missing, possibly, right? I mean, what are your thoughts on it? As for the grain truck, the load, you see the red trailer on the back, which obviously had the seeds in. I believe the seeds were searched through, did not find Dylan in the back, right? And it's one of those things where even if they didn't search through it immediately, if the body decomposed, you probably get flies and birds circling. And if it's inside the grain shed, the smell will get worse. If it's on the outside, you'll see it visually, I guess. You'd be prompted to it. So it would be resolved at the end of the day. But yeah, they didn't find Dylan inside the back of the grain truck, and they did look for it from how it's been worded. As for the seeds, they were taken away, I believe. I think Justin took them away. But I did see a few bags left in the grain shed at the time. Don't know if they're still there to this day. But I guess with Candice Cooley talking about the crops being sorted, dealt with by her mother, then I'm sure other bits and bobs would have been, looked at and managed too. I mean, as for the equipment, supposedly Kurt Wadsworth's equipment is still out there. I don't know if there's significance, importance behind that. Did Kurt Wadsworth do the odd job for Dylan? I'm sure I heard it worded like that somewhere. It would make sense if the equipment's out there. But that's for another video, okay? So, I think what we can say is that there's a possibility that the grain truck may have been used, possibly, not saying it 100%. I'd say in my personal opinion, Dylan's own truck, there's a high chance that Dylan's own truck was used to dispose of Dylan by the suspect over the likes of the grain truck. But, I'm not discounting the grain truck completely, right? I just think there's a certain hierarchy of likeliness, the likelihood. I'll do a poll right now. If one of Dylan's vehicles was used, which one do you think is more likely to be used when disposing of Dylan? The grain truck or Dylan's personal Ford F-150? Make sure to vote now. I guess one reason why you could argue the grain truck was used was when we look here, the grain shed on the inside. If Dylan was taking the grain truck to the grain shed on Saturday the 28th because of the rain incoming, as soon as Dylan got here, after the whole, issue with the gate being locked earlier on, by the time Dylan got here, parked it in, got out of his truck, maybe as he just got out or turned around, displaying his back, Brenner creeped up behind and then whacked him on the head. Is that a possibility? It does make you think, right? Like, just about getting out and then Brenner's already there, or comes storming round into the shed to confront him, an ambush or direct confrontation. Which one do you think? But I think there's an important point we need to raise immediately. You see this down here? That's where the hole was dug up. A small, shallow one. You've seen it before, correct? Yeah? Here, some form of evidence was found, right? What exactly? Well, I think one person worded it one way, another person worded it another. The shack lady originally said biological matter was found here, in this exact spot. And the FBI dug it up to, I guess, take for evidence, to take soil samples, I guess. And I don't know if it was the shack lady as well that followed on with the point, or if it was Tom Evans. It was one or the other that said it could have been vomit, or it was vomit. Then people were adding on saying, well, if it was vomit, maybe Dylan was struck over the head, hit in the head. He fell to the floor, having a seizure, body shaking, and then started, throwing up or frothing at the mouth, whatever a seizure contains, right? In that spot. But there's a problem, right? Take in mind that when Dylan was present before he was hurt, he was successful in parking the grain truck in the grain shed, right? And as Candice Cooley has said, that the grain shed just about fits the grain truck inside due to the size of the truck, right? The front part sticks out, but the seeds are kept dry because they're sheltered. Do you see where I'm going with this? You combine the hole on the ground here, where the biological matter was found of Dylan's, from the looks of it, and also the grain truck being parked in here. How can it all fit into the same spot? What I'm saying is, if biological matter was found towards the back of the grain shed on the floor, then the grain truck could not have been parked or present inside of the grain shed when that biological matter was exhumed from the victim. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? Because if the grain truck was parked in here right now, directly in the middle, Dylan, if that hole where the evidence was found, then Dylan would have had to be underneath the truck. You see what I'm saying? Underneath the truck, because the truck would be covering most of this surface area, including where the hole was dug. You get what I'm saying? So either Dylan was underneath the truck, or he was very close to the truck and got hurt, fell to the floor, and then the vomit or the blood or whatever trickled underneath the truck, which would not exactly make sense. Or the only other option would be the truck was driven back out for whatever reason, and then Dylan was hurt, attacked. But how would that make any sense? It wouldn't, really. The only other thing I can think of, and this is a third theory, okay, is that as Dylan drove down, he had his truck in position, lined up, like how it is in his screenshot. And just before Dylan could actually park it in the grain shed, Brenner came along and had a go at him, or had it out with him, and then Brenner hurt Dylan, maybe as they walked into the grain shed to talk it out, maybe to get away from all the dust and noise. Go inside of the grain shed, then talk it through, and suddenly whack Dylan on the head, or punch him, or strangle him to the ground in that exact spot at the back of the grain shed. Dylan's on the ground, as you see on screen, on his side or on his back or face down in the ground. Biological matter leaks, seeps into the soil. And then at that moment, Brenner gets a hold of Dylan, drags him back to the grain truck, which is still outside, places Dylan inside of the grain truck, and then drives the grain truck elsewhere, wherever that may be. It could be to the pivot, where there's supposedly evidence, because of the whole seeding situation, let's say. It could be back to Dylan's farm. It could be further afar. It could be, I don't think, boarding onto Montello, though, with that grain truck, because of gas, because of the engine, because of the speed, etc. But That's like how you could interpret it, right? And then that would tie in both the theory of the grain truck being used to dispose of Dylan, but as well, the reason why the biological matter was found here before the grain truck was actually parked back, right? So, linking back onto that grain truck being used, taken somewhere with Dylan inside, Brenner came back with that truck here and then parked it in the grain shed because that's what Dylan was originally going to do. And with the grain truck being parked in a grain shed, it then wouldn't look as suspicious, right? You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't parked, then it would seem like an unfinished job by Dylan, and Dylan isn't known for being like that. So it would raise more suspicion sooner than other outcomes, right? That's where I'm thinking. And if you reinforce it with that evidence, prints, DNA found on the inside of the truck, which had like Don's prints, Brenner's prints, then you could say it might be relevant to the time when Dylan went missing, possibly, because one of them was behind the wheel at the time. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully. What I would say, though, at the end of the day, even if the grain truck theory can be dispelled, dismantled, cleared up, debunked, I still think the following interesting point is the whole situation back here, dug up by the FBI, evidence collected. For that evidence to appear in the first place, the truck couldn't have been present, parked inside, because there wouldn't be any space for Dylan to be in that spot, because the truck would be obstructing it. Does that make sense? I mean, I can't really do a demonstration. I wonder if I could do a demonstration on the spot. I'm going to try a demonstration right now, okay? By what I mean. Okay, hi. So I can finally do a hands-on demonstration to what I mean regarding the grain truck, Dylan, Brenner, Dylan getting hurt, and the biological matter being found, okay? So just visualise it. I don't think it shows on camera, does it? Just imagine this is the grain truck, okay? Imagine this is the grain truck, which needs to be parked inside of the grain shed, okay? Just imagine it's longer than what you think, okay? This is the opening to the grain shed, okay? Probably a bit wider in a sense, but just try and imagine. It goes in to the back, and then this circular bit, or semicircle if you'd call it that, that's the area radius in the middle at the back of the grain shed where that hole was, okay? So, if you, let's just make it a bit more relevant so it's a bit in proportion. You got the truck, it reverses in, just lower it down a little bit, okay? Truck's reversed in by Dylan, okay, like that. There you go. Do you see what the problem is? It's all the way in, right? And just imagine bits sticking out. That radius, where that hole was, is now covered, right? Because the truck is on top of it. We pull it out. There you go. That's where the hole is, where it was dug at, right there. But if the truck was parked inside at the time, then that biological matter couldn't have got there as easily. You get what I'm saying? Does that make sense to you? Let me just get one more additional thing. Hold on. There we go. So, what I think... Oops. Get that down. What I think is if the truck was left out for a second and you had like Brenner, you had Dylan, okay, talking it out, or they decided to walk on into the grain shed to begin with. Imagine this is Dylan, okay? Dylan is down here in this area. Will it stand up? There we go, good. Okay, that's Dylan. I don't have an additional character, but it doesn't matter. And then Dylan is, punched or strangled. He falls to the floor like that. Does it show? And then maybe the biological matter comes out of his mouth, if it's like vomit, if he's having a seizure on the ground, and dies at the scene on the spot, right? that would explain why the biological matter was found there and why it was dug up. And then what I'm thinking is Brenner got a hold of Dylan, dragged him out possibly, and then what could have happened, you got the truck, right? Put Dylan maybe in the back of it, like that. Oh, does he not fit in? Come on. Put him in the back. Oh, you can't quite see. Can you see it? Like that. Closed it up. And then drove onwards, wherever. And then disposed of Dylan. And then came back here. Reversed on in, like that. And then it was left like that. Now, Brenner probably wouldn't have thought or took into mind about the matter, the DNA, the leftovers, because it might have seeped into the ground by then. It might have looked a bit damp, moist, wet, whether it would be vomit, whether it be just some kind of spit, saliva, or actual blood. If it soaked into the ground, which most likely it did because the ground is somewhat dry, it's dirt, sand type stuff. You know, you've seen at scenes of crimes where they've used sand kind of to absorb blood or to absorb petrol fuel spillages. So the same could happen with blood, right? And at that spot, it dries up, seeps into the ground, you get back, you forget about it, you don't notice it, and you leave it. And it's only when an investigation takes place, when someone does a bit of digging about, prodding or testing for soil samples, then they highlight and identify that there was something there and someone present. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm trying to say. Once again, take in mind, proportions of this, it's only a chair. Proportions of the radius of the hole where the truck is situated isn't exactly to scale. Of course, this is an on-the-spot demonstration, but I wanted to finally describe it to you visually because really, I've only been able to ever do it once, and that was more to do with the keyhole, okay, with the Kenny Veach case when I was doing a psychological explanation. So hopefully this demonstrated the Dylan Rounds situation with the grain shed and the grain truck, okay? So I think we will leave it there, okay? Try and get it back into frame. You see that dot? That's why I look like an Indian with that little dot on my forehead. Chicken spot scar. But I think we'll leave it there because football is literally right on now. So it's like, shit, got to run down, got to check the score and shit. And yeah, if you've got any more thoughts, opinions, questions, ideas, feel free to list it down below in the comment section, okay? I've still got some other videos to get round to when I can, okay? And yeah, as for the questions earlier on, if you can answer them, make sure to do so down below, okay? I think it was a worthy video, this. Shout out to Christy that highlighted it in the first place, which indirectly enabled me to question the whole situation in the grain shed, considering the truck being parked in there, right? So it had been parked in, pulled out maybe, left out, then parked back in, then pulled back out later because of the spring cleaning and never put back in. So it looks like the order, in, out, shake it all about. It's time to go now. And yeah, thanks for watching. Good night for now, and goodbye.